You guys want to talk about the most insanely stupid thing I've seen all day? You want to know? Like, this actually upset me. This actually really, really upset me. Okay. So you guys have heard, Jacob and I got flown out to LA just a couple weeks ago, I guess 2 weeks ago as of today, I think. But we got flown out to LA. It was awesome. We got to tour James Cameron's like private collection of artifacts. We got to see the Titanic models used in the film, the actual heart of the sea, heart of the ocean, whatever necklace, the actual Oscar from Best Picture in 1997. I got to hold it and take pictures with it. It was super cool. And then play Avatar Frontiers of Pandora. I put up a video yesterday on the main channel discussing my thoughts on it. And so you can go hear all of that there. And I'm sure we'll talk about it with Joe Raptor here on the podcast in about an hour and a half. But one of the things that was most cool about that tour is seeing all of the artifacts that Weta Digital had created for the creation of Avatar and the films, because they're the wizards of special effects and stuff that are behind those films. And something insane happened, okay? Something really, really insane and very, very stupid happened. Weta, which is a legendary group within the VFX industry, is being shut down by Unity. Unity bought them like 2 years ago from Peter Jackson for $1.625 billion. That was back in December of 2021. So they bought that to help create the metaverse. This is the CEO that now is disgraced and has left. This is the guy that was behind that insane pricing model where they were going to charge developers and publishers per download of games using the Unity engine. And it was received so horribly that he was forced into quitting or retiring. And tons of employees got laid off. They had revenues plummet. Like, he almost single-handedly imploded the entire company with his dumbass decisions. He's just insane. Like, he's just insane. But this is him back then talking about the acquisition of Weta Digital.
The new era of creativity is really, something bigger than it's ever been before.
Unity's really been focused on this mission that the world's a better place with more creators in it. But what we see now is that there's a new generation of creators that are going to want to, imagine even more in rich 3D experiences.
Avatar or Lord of the Rings or Wonder Woman wouldn't have been possible without Weta's tools and the great artists behind them.
We knew that digital effects offered so much possibility for us to be able to create the worlds and the creatures that we were imagining.
Now we're taking those tools that we have created and handing them over to Unity to market them for the entire world.
Well, together, Unity and Weta Digital can create a pathway for any artist in any industry who will now be able to leverage these incredible creative tools.
Now those tools will escape the Weta world and they'll be available to everywhere.
We see that being used in just about every industry you can imagine, from retail to medicine to film and TV and gaming, of course.
I think for a generation to come, Weta is going to be one of Unity's most important partners and probably our greatest source of inspiration.
Offering new and aspiring creatives access to Weta Digital's technology will be game-changing.
We're incredibly excited to continue that deep partnership where we work with them as they are working on their next movies, as they continue to sort of create. But the real magic here is what both of us are each also independently great at.
What we do the best is what we make incredible VFX shots and animation clips for film and TV.
And we are going to be great at take all of that innovation and make it accessible to a much broader set of creators around the world.
Sounds great, right? Take their amazing tool sets and technologies, bring it more public and mainstream in the Unity tool set. Sounds great. Also, shout out to Peter Jackson. I feel like every time I see a picture or video of this guy, he's holding a cup of coffee. He's an absolute legend. Kind of looks like a homeless Santa in a lot of ways. But anyway, sounded great. They have now, though, decided to just fire everybody. Part of a company reset. Effectively, what it seems like they did is that they bought Weta Digital for $1.625 billion, which by most metrics, apparently Unity really couldn't afford that. That was stretching themselves pretty damn thin, which is part of the reason that they needed to increase revenues like they did, and why they pushed a little too hard on doing all this. So basically, I mean, if we just go through this, Unity has announced a round of layoffs and the closure of Weta Digital after it decided to end its agreement with Peter Jackson's Weta Effects. The layoffs will impact 265 employees, 3.8% of its workforce. So specifically 3.8% of its workforce, not Weta's, Unity's. For Weta, this is like the whole thing. This is the whole thing. I mean, Peter Jackson has to be livid. They have some world-class artists. I mean, again, Avatar, Lord of the Rings, Avengers Endgame, like all of these iconic films with amazing special effects, Weta Digital, and they're just dumping them. Like, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. Now, I don't fully understand, and maybe they get into this, like exactly where the film side of this ends and where the tools begin, and then the tools as they lead into the film development and the game development. Like, I don't know how this agreement exactly worked, because as far as I'm aware, it hasn't been like clearly stated exactly what this deal involved. But let's continue. Because likely I'm saying all this and then they're going to answer it further down in the article, so I'll just shut up. But back in December 2021, Unity acquired part of Peter Jackson's Weta Digital, including Weta Digital's tools, pipeline, technology, and engineering talent in a deal worth $1.625 billion. The remainder of Weta Digital remained under Jackson's ownership and was rebranded to Weta FX, with the company maintaining an agreement to use Weta Digital's tools and services. Okay, so they did a deal with the company to get access to their tools and engineering talent, but the remainder of Weta Digital remained under Peter Jackson's ownership and was Weta FX. And so they're ending their deal with Weta FX, and layoffs with Weta Digital, which is the part that they acquired, are being shut down, which I don't know what that does to Weta FX. Like, does that now mean that they don't have engineers or rights to their tools anymore? Because it sounds like they just hired Peter Jackson's engineering team for $1.6 billion, took the tools, fired the engineers, and part of the deal made it so Weta FX would keep access to the tools, but now there's no engineers to make or maintain the tools. So it just seems like Peter Jackson made $1.6 billion to lose all of his engineering talent and software engineers and tools. Like, that's what it seems to me. But anyway, they go on. Now, Unity has terminated the professional services part of the agreement, which will result in the layoffs of 265 employees involved in the agreement. Weta FX issued a statement to FX Guide saying it would be looking to rehire as much of Weta Digital's team as possible. Unity will retain ownership of the tools it acquired, and they will remain readily available for Weta FX to use. Okay. So maybe, just maybe, this isn't that big of a deal. If they say that they're looking to rehire as much of them as possible, maybe it is that just Unity's firing them under the Unity umbrella, and then Weta is just going to rehire them all. So they're just kind of moving from one company to the other, I guess. So to me, this really sounds like they just spent $1.625 billion to get access to Weta tools, and that's it. They lost the engineering talent because now they can't afford to keep them. Wow. Okay. They go on to say, Unity believes Weta Digital's team is remarkable, but Unity needs to become a leaner force as it focuses its expertise on its core business. Again, they expanded too much. The statement says, explaining why this decision was made, quote, it also believes it makes more sense for Weta FX to own full end-to-end production activities directly. Unity will be focusing. Well, then, if that's the case, why did you buy it for $1.6 billion? Like, it's a pretty big turnaround within 2 years to be like, yeah, well, we decided that that thing we spent over $1 billion on, yeah, it didn't really make sense. Wow. Okay. Unity will be focusing its expertise and people on other matters, and Weta FX will be getting support for its use of the Weta tools directly from its own crew, a shorter path which makes sense for both companies. Again, then why did you pay $1.6 billion for it? It's just crazy to me, dude. The move has been called a company reset by Unity, the company looking to refocus on its core business of game development. Unity will also look to reduce its office footprint as a cost-cutting measure, shutting down offices in 14 locations, including Berlin and Singapore. The company will encourage employees to work from home more often, removing mandatory in-office days for employees and reducing full in-office services to just 3 days a week. The layoffs come at a tumultuous time for the company after it tried to introduce the unpopular runtime fee to make up revenue. The fallout from that announcement saw developers across the industry denounce Unity, along with a steep drop in share price, and CEO John Riccitiello stepped away from the company. Unity employees have already faced layoffs this year, with 8% of its workforce laid off in May, in a move the company said was necessary for higher growth. So all of this just sounds like they spend $1.6 billion to get access to Weta tools and engineers, and now they're firing the engineers because they can't afford to pay them. And so Weta's just going to rehire the engineers and team behind it. And so Weta is just, I mean, they're basically sharing the tools that they would already be using and producing, but now they get all of their engineers back. Like this actually now, if they do get to rehire the talent, this sounds like a win-win for Weta because they get their employees back under their roof. They made $1.6 billion and all they have to do is share their tools with Unity now. Like I don't see the downside. So initially it sounds horrible, but shocker, when you read the article, it changes the narrative. It's weird. So that's what the W in Weta stands for. So it sounds like Peter Jackson just comes out of this with a lot of money in his pocket and a very happy fella. So wow. Does Weta FX have to pay Unity now to no, I think the agreement, how they say was that the company maintains an agreement to use Weta Digital's tools and services. If there is like a payment involved with that, I would doubt that. Like it doesn't really make sense for Unity to pay Weta and then on the other side require Weta to pay Unity. Like which side is paying, you know? So it seems like Weta probably just gets access to it as part of the deal. It's priced into the 1.6. Maybe it was like $2 billion if they don't get access to the tools, 1.6 if they do. I don't know. I'm confused. So why are they laid off? Because Unity can't afford to pay them. Whoops, sorry. Unity, like they're so strapped for cash already. They couldn't really afford the $1.6 billion acquisition back in 2021. And a lot of people were upset that the CEO, that John Riccitiello or whatever, that he decided to do this because they were like, Unity's not really making much money. And then you just decided to spend $1.6 billion and we're not really sure why, because it doesn't really help our core business. Like, I think it was his goal to make Unity more mainstream and used in like broader applications, kind of like Unreal Engine, where Unreal Engine is used in like, it's used in car dashboards. It's used in like stadiums. It's used all over the place. It's really, really broad in its application. So maybe he was hoping to get that, but yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Kevin? So why did they buy them if they can't afford to keep them? Well, yeah, Morpheus, I agree. That's what everybody's saying right now. Like, it was a really weird decision, but this is the same kind of thing that Embracer Group did. So if you recall, just a few years ago, interest rates were super, super low. And when interest rates are low, debt is what's called cheap. So you can take out loans to do big things like buying companies or like expanding office buildings or whatever. And you can do all of that at a very low cost. However, debt doesn't stay cheap forever. Rates go up. And that's kind of what's happened. So a lot of these companies have expanded very, very quickly during COVID because money was so cheap. And this is like, unless you're familiar with finance, it kind of breaks your brain to think about. But if inflation is at a certain percentage rate and the interest rate on a loan is below that inflationary rate, it makes more sense to take out a loan and acquire debt to do stuff with than to sit on cash that you have and spend that cash on things. It makes a lot more sense to acquire the debt because the debt is so cheap that it's basically free money. And that's what we had during COVID. That's why every company was just exploding right after the initial drop during COVID, because the money was basically free. And now we're suffering from it because that's not how the economy works. If you do that, it's boom time for a year and then inflation catches up and everybody's like, wait, you just added a flood of new cash into the economy. You can't just do that. Now everything's going to be more expensive because you've diluted the value of the currency. And that's what we're dealing with now. And it's the same thing with all these companies where they expanded really, really quickly and aggressively. And now they're like, well, we were hoping we would just magically figure out how to pay for all of this. And now we can't. So we're screwed. And that's where they're at. And so they're laying off people and stuff is changing. So it is what it is. Why did they make money free anyways? Because when there's a global shutdown of every business and economy and people are in lockdowns and stuff, you'd expect companies to effectively lose their financial standing and sales to drop and the economy to crash, people to get laid off, and then they're under lockdown and they're unemployed, so they can't pay their rent and all this. So there's a lot of cascading effects that can come in when something horrible happens, like a recession or lockdowns. So the government tried to come in and bankroll everything and basically give everybody enough money that they could behave as if we weren't in a lockdown and the economy wasn't shut down, even though it was. So they did that to stimulate the economy and keep it running, even though it wasn't really running. Kind of like, I don't know if you live in a super cold climate, but if you have like your car parked out on the driveway and it's minus 30 outside, it's going to be really hard for that car to start. And then once it starts even, it's going to take a long time for it to heat up to a comfortable temperature where it's operating normally and where you can get in and participate in the activities within the car comfortably. So what some people will do is they'll go out and they'll start their car early, or they'll keep it running while they're inside so it doesn't drop to that low temperature. That's basically what the government was trying to do, was keep the car running while it's freezing outside because the economy is so bitter cold and shut down. They try to keep it running to keep it warm and hot and ready to go, but that takes gas. And now they're like, they poured all this gas that they didn't really have, and now that, you know, check is coming due. Yeah, and now we're out of fuel, basically. Yeah. He took my thing. Red